Something that I kind of wonder if every once in a while I'm like, did I brought that up, right? But the many people who are left of center, and now this is really showing it's. I remember it was bugging me, this QAnon thing. What they're trying to do is to equate this to the alt-right. So, like, that there's these yahoos, there's the racists and the yahoos, like the alternative right where the racists, maybe racist yahoos, while the QAnon are the yahoos, who aren't necessarily racist, but probably are. That kind of thing. In all cases, it's crazy and hateful, that kind of thing is the idea. So a lot of people on the right have actually, and a lot of people they've left the left have had to face sort of this terrible thing of, no, they're the ones doing the projection. Like they should really understand this inherently, being that they know they're kooks. They know that that's what they identify with. Like they identify with psychedelia and drugs and the averse and rebellion, and that's a part of the culture of the left. It's inherent to it. So that's not a stable mind. No, that's not a stable personality. That's not like evidence of like good socialization in any society. It's now in America we kind of appreciate greatly the idea of sort of the rebel without a cause. We're into that. Like that's why that actually is kind of what gives that style to American stuff is the rebellious quality that happens, and especially with music, that's where we really championed it. Music and dance music, and that we're the people who make the world dance is the United States, and it's always an effort that, while identified as some kind of specifically ethnic music, American dance music has always been a multi-racial it's a thing made by many races. The clarinet is not a black people instrument. So the QAnon stuff comes from this lack of knowing about Americana, and like really a disdain for how complicated it is. I'm very into a lot of things American because I really like my country and I find the people here fascinating. That's why I like there's a channel, Peter, I think is Santagello. He travels around and goes from like hoods, and he goes from country to country and place to place to place and shows you all these cool places. So like he made me subscribe to Navajo Man and Lakota Bay, who are living on the res, and it's that res life, and like what the normal life of res people, who are living normal American lives, well, normal American lives for Native Americans on the res, but and so that's the thing is, like, I don't think probably none of these journalists who love trying to shit on, say, Trump's shoes would ever be interested in the fact that YouTube has Native Americans on the res talking about their normal lives and streaming regularly about res life. I bet they have no interest in this whatsoever. Like, doesn't come up on their radar, and it's because it's not popular among shallow people. And that's been the unfortunate thing about the left. The center left, because it's young, is into being shallow and having interests that are kind of vapid. And it's the way young people are, but it's gotten really bad. And where the 90s, it was kind of bizarre levels of misplaced political idealism or cultural idealism of some sort. But now with the present generation, it's mixed with sort of this complete lack of any historical knowledge, and making it just really dangerous. I still want to do, every once in a while, I still want to do the super culture challenge. Is this Nell Carter, or is this Barbara from Barbara and the Browns, or is this Felicia Rashad? See, who knows? But we'll see, we'll see how that goes. But it's the thing that QAnon really showed me. None of these people, the use of QAnon really shows none of these people read the alternative rights writings so that they can criticize them. Because there's a lot that on the right, lots of people criticized the alt-right, like in detail, to the point that, most of the original people, such as Richard Spencer, they're not around really anymore. And now they're into like what are obviously kind of race mysticism things. Like I think they're calling their new way of thinking Apollonianism, and nobody talks about them. No one on the right talks about them. They're gone. The right took the alt-right and threw it out because they were boring and their ideas really weren't going anywhere. That's it. Nobody on the left of center knows that, because they don't care, because they never looked into these people. They never really looked into what these people were writing, what they were saying, and what that scene was, because they're not really interested in politics and ideas. And it starts to show with the coercive nature of now a democratic regime. And that once you see, if they even have too many people in the bureaus, they will make it a syndicalist state. And so that was something that we don't use that term, because I think it's very specific and it's not exactly the right term. But syndicalist state, where everything is run sort of by these union groups, and they're their own secret societies practically. And that what a lot of the issues in our government system are these various unions trying to game for authority over one or another policy or legislative issue. And that it's all in the union's hands, that it's no longer a matter of who you vote for and them telling all these people that are in a union but they work for the government to do what the people wanted according to legislation. Then now it's become quite obvious that no, there's a bunch of people who are in these syndicates, and they do what they want, and they take what is the law, and they sort of loosely they interpret it quite willy-nilly, and you can't fire them. We've agreed by law to not fire the unionized government workers at the federal level. They're heavily protected from anything ever happening to them. We won't simply just pass a law saying that the people can hire and fire who they want at a whimsy. And it's because this idea that America would then, because of the Democrats, and I'm really quite serious, because of the Democrats did make laws just openly discriminating against people working in the government. They had no problem doing so. They had no problem saying that like people of color couldn't work within the government at one time when they were that kind of party. And it took not just getting the Supreme Court to tell them you can't do that, but eventually it was like overwhelming force of legislation, because the party is that despicable. They were and they still are that despicable of a party. So what this now is that they're desperately worried that the actual working class white Americans could have access to federal power. That's really what they're worried about. that the people who actually do pay the taxes and whose sons and who themselves actually fought in wars and have the real expertise on the ground on how almost every single thing gets done, they are terrified that those kind of people could ever have say over them, because it really is that they got into government work because it was a great gig, you know. You don't have to provide a real service. You don't have to make a product. You just get to tell people what the fuck to do. I mean, that's a great gig. That's a fantastic job, and that's what the deal is. That's what really is going on with that. And that's why you keep finding it skews toward a certain party. That's been true for decades. Washington D.C. The D.C. is Democratic Party. It's but now the thing that is the best part about this is, if the research had been done, there could have been a reaction like, no, that's not accurate. And something, you know, if you study the person's argument, you can then take it apart. But if the idea is, I'm going to make sure to criticize anybody who even reads your argument or even humors it, well, then you can't even know what the weak part of the argument is. And that's the consistent, deadly error that's been made by the political left. They will not humor knowing what their opponents have to say. And that's it. And so, but their opponents are very well schooled on what the political left thinks. The right knows the political left. The left would not, they don't actually have words really to describe the phenomena on the right. Describing it as the right wing from the French Revolution doesn't make sense. These are not royalists looking to save the Vendée from Robespierre and his army of rapists. It's, the second part is still applies, but it's not Robespierre this time. So it doesn't really describe, though, what this thing is on the right. And because they have no words for it, it's a Jabberwocky or a Jub bird that they just can't handle.